The title of our next presentation is RegExcellent, but I'm not convinced because I spent an hour yesterday trying to get RegEx to do what I wanted, and it's still not there. So maybe Phil can convince me that they're actually good.
So a few weeks ago, Henry gave a talk about one of his side projects, working on a bike, and my talk today is about one of my side projects. But first, I'm going to introduce myself. So before I worked at NCR, I was in film, and that is me there. Things went better for Keanu than they did for me, and so I ended up as a software engineer. And so my talk today is RegExcellent, my RegExcellent adventure. And I am a front-end engineer, and this is me at React Europe preaching. And I'm preaching about React, so I'm actually preaching to the converted, and so it goes down really well. But outside of my day job, I do actually do some preaching. I'm a Christian, and this is me dressed as John Knox and preaching in the Royal Mile for about several years. I used to help run a tour of the Royal Mile, which brought out its history from a Christian perspective. Now, one kind of interesting thing about the Bible is that it is, for me, it's like a hypertext document. And so when you kind of open up the Bible, you often find all these references here which tell you about how passages link together. So in Mark's Gospel, it kind of begins, the beginning of the Gospel of Jesus Christ. Am I on the right page? The beginning of the Gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God, as is written in Isaiah the prophet. So this is a link back somewhere else. Behold, I send my messenger before your face, who will prepare your way. The voice of one crying in the wilderness, prepare the way for the Lord, make his path straight. And so then you go and you flick into Isaiah, which was written 400 years earlier. And so the Bible is written by 40 different authors over 1,500 years, basically. And so there's all these kind of links going between them. And often the way that a link is created is with this kind of taking a phrase from one place, and then you look back and you find where it was before, and you read the context there, and it gives you more context about the verse that you're reading. So up here it kind of speaks about the voice of one crying out in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord. And as you come down, you find more context. So the person who is kind of in the future becomes John the Baptist. It kind of gives the message 400 years earlier is about to preach, or what's the nature of it. And it says, like, a voice says, cry out. And I said, what shall I cry out? All flesh is like grass, and its beauty or its glory is like the flowers of the field. The flowers, the grass withers, and the flowers fall when the breath of the Lord blows on it. Surely the people are as grass, and the grass withers, and the flowers fall, but the word of God stands forever. And so it's saying, like, all the things that we do are pretty transient. They perish and they fall away. But then there's a time when all that transient stuff disappears. Our works, our JavaScript frameworks we've done, forgotten about. Everyone's moved on, and we've moved on too. But then, according to the Bible, what Christians believe is that God's word goes on. And so, what I wondered was what would happen if we took something transient, like a JavaScript framework, and we connected it to something eternal, like God's word. Now, the Bible says that the entire world is held together by God's word. So I wondered if when we did this, we connect something transient to something eternal, would the universe actually unravel? Well, the good news is that today we're going to find out. So I made a project called React Bible, and the idea of it is basically that when you're reading the Bible, you also get commentaries, which are things that kind of theologians have written, which knit together these books. And as you're reading them through any Christian book, you'll kind of get these references at the bottom. And this tells you how the books of the Bible fit together. So here it says kind of Galatians 3:28, Ephesians 2:14 forward, which means just keep reading until you get bored, basically. And then Colossians 3:11. And so these verses are kind of okay to parse. I'm trying to write a parser to parse these references, because it's quite hard work when you're reading this stuff. Because you'll be turning up in the Bible with one hand, and then you'll be, and if somebody's quoted about 5 or 6 verses, it can be quite painful to turn up all these verses. But then you get something like this, which is 1 Timothy 3:8, and also 1 Timothy 12, and 4 and 6. And so I've been trying to write a parser that parses these kind of things. Now, the books are actually quite easy to parse. So the books have lots of abbreviations as well. So these are kind of the abbreviations. So like for 1 Samuel, you can have 1 Sam, 1 SA, 1 Samuel, 1 S, ISA, And so the first part of my RegEx thing just takes these strings and concatenates them with a pipe or an or symbol and says, if you type in this, then, that's the first part of your RegEx. So that bit was quite simple. But then I was running into a roadblock, and that was with verses which are kind of like this. And the problem with this is, so I was doing this on a training day, and we actually have an expert in parsing ancient documents here, and that's Chris Yockham. So I went to him and said, this is what I'm trying to do. Is it sane? Can I do it? And the problem with this verse, basically, or this reference, is that it's delimited by commas which mean different things. So here, Romans chapter 3, verse 23, comma 5, in this case the comma means chapter, because this is a chapter, so then it means, because this has got a colon line, it means go to this chapter. But if I go to the end here, this comma here means Romans chapter 6, verse 12, and 23. And then this comma here means that there's a book coming next. And so the problem is that this comma has different meanings. And what Chris said to me is, Phil, you have a problem there, because the way that we parse things is using what's called a context-free grammar. And he says, Phil, the problem that you have there is that you have context. You've got two lots of, but it's only a little bit of context. It's only these little things. And he said, no, actually, there's research papers written about this. You are destined to fail at this. So I didn't believe it. I persisted with my training day, and sure enough, Chris was pretty right on this. In the problem, he said, that you're trying to maintain 2 stacks, basically. One where you are in this string, and the other of what these commas actually mean. And so basically the problem boiled down to, is there a way that I can get rid of this context? And so in my training day, I completely failed to solve the problem. But then I thought, actually, well, these commas they could have a common meaning. And that would be that if I treated all commas as a delimiter and said that each of these things was a range, so I could say Romans chapter 3:23 is one range, 5:12 to 14 is another range, 6:12 is one range, 23 to 23 is verse 23 to 23 is another range, and this is another range. And so what I did was, let's see, is that up there? Oh, was that actually on the screen when I was showing it? Or because you not see what I've done. I'm used to the blended view in this. So this is the initial thing that I do is that I split based on comma or new line or semicolon, and then I'm trying to find a range start and a range end, and I've just got this reduce function which goes over these segments. And then I basically have to say that these segments are each a token and parse these tokens. And I I create kind of different regexes. So this one matches a book, a chapter, and a verse together. And this one matches a book and a chapter. And this one matches only a book. And this one matches a chapter and a verse on its own. And this one matches a book and kind of fast forward to the end thing. Then I can just do like an if then else or a switch statement based on matching these tokens, having split these things by commas. And I managed to get this working. This approach seemed to work, and I was able to create a project called React Bible, which I've now published on GitHub. And after I announced it on Twitter, I got this reaction, and I've now bought the domain. That's where it'll be, and I'll just show you what that looks like. Okay, so this is kind of what I'm doing in my day job, is creating things like these filter boxes here, that when you type something in, it kind of filters it on key down. So you have a long list of things, and as you type something in, it filters that list on every key press. One of the things I was wondering was, could you filter the entire Bible on every key press? So this is the kind of React Bible project. Let's see if that's going to load. Okay, and so now this is the kind of the search thing, and so I can type in a word here. So if I type in like Peter, it's going to search as I'm typing, and it immediately kind of comes up with the New Testament, because Peter doesn't appear until the beginning of the New Testament. And I'm using the ranges here in this range section, so I can type in ranges here, or when I find a verse I'm interested in, I can kind of copy it and I can paste it into this verse list here, and now I can do kind of 18 to 19, and verse 19 appears, and then I can put 21 on the end, and then I can put, let's say, John, I can put J, H, N, and 4, and so that's now giving me kind of John chapter 4. I can change that to John chapter 4, verse 2, and so now I can have kind of these arbitrary lists of verses, and I can kind of maintain the context in this regular expression. And that is my talk. Any questions?
That seems really fast. Do you load the entire content in memory?
Yeah. So this is one of the interesting things about this project, is that all other things on the web tend to have like a REST API where you make a query for a certain number of verses, and then it then processes that query and sends it back over the network, and that's pretty slow. What I found really interesting about this project is, because the Bible is kind of fixed in terms of its length, it means that you normally if I'm working on something in DI, we say like, are we going to load this over the network, or are we going to put this in memory? It's 2 megabytes now, but it could grow to 10. Therefore, we'll query over the network. But in this case, we kind of know that this book is going to stay the same length. And so it's really interesting, because I feel like I'm working at something, solving a problem that not many people are trying to solve. And so the rules about how you re-render things and how you make it performant is really different. So one of the things on this pane here, so if I take that out of there, the whole Bible is in here. So if I kind of scroll down here, who Max scroll was, let's see, scroll down, I'll eventually get to Revelation 22, 21, and that's really nice, because when I type something like, let's play a game. You've got to guess if a certain programming technology is mentioned in the Bible. Okay. Okay. So agile. Who thinks agile will be in the Bible? Agile. Okay. Let's see. Sorry, no magic. Waterfall? Waterfall, yeah.
Yes.
Not in the King James.
Java.
Java.
You are only searching a range, right? Oh, no, it's full.
No. Rust?
Yeah, Rust.
Yeah, let's see, Rust. Yeah, Rust is in there. Slack? Slack, there's an appropriate one for Slack, I think. Let me see if I can find it.
The bottom.
Yeah. He becometh poor, that dealeth with a slack hand. See? The hand of the diligent maketh rich. So that random channel on Slack, maketh you poor, yeah. But the nice thing is that I know that when I'm doing this, I'm not scrolling through, I'm not paginating through these lists. And when Christians are using the Bible, like if you're using a physical Bible and it's something you use regularly, you find that like after using it a bit, somebody will say a verse and you'll be able to open within like one page of that verse just through familiarity of where things are or something like that. So having something that you can scroll down quickly and say, oh, this is in Psalms, it's going to be somewhere in the middle of the list or something like that, is quite a nice, fast way of doing things. And it's something that I might use for preaching. Like I'd have a list of verses, which is here, that may be what I'm talking on, and then if in the middle of like a sermon I wanted to find something, I could probably type away and bring it up. The interesting thing for this was that I set out to write it in React, and actually React, there's some things which are not ideal in React because React has a virtual DOM, which means it has a second DOM on top of the initial DOM. And so if I used React's DOM to render the verses, then it would mean that I'm using double the memory that I need to. And so I'm actually using raw DOM here. And this means I can do nice things like you can actually see the context around the verse by using arrow keys to like bring up context and things like that. So yeah. Any other questions? No? Thank you very much.